Hello, and welcome to Agnes Scott's webinar on navigating the application process. My name is Faith Rashidi-Yazd. I am an admission counselor here at Agnes Scott, and I'm really happy to be sharing some more information with you today. So, jumping right into it, the first important step of the application process is choosing which deadline works best for you. This is important because it'll help you create your timeline and help you think about what pieces of your application you need to be working on and when it ultimately needs to be finished. This will look different for different schools as well as for different students, so you'll want to make sure that you choose the best one for you. Here at Agnes Scott, we have 4 different deadlines: early decision, early action 1 and 2, and then regular decision. Some important things to consider as you're choosing your best deadline is first, is a binding or non-binding deadline right for you? And what does binding even mean? Binding just means that if you apply to a school and you are accepted to that college or university, that is where you are going to attend. So this really works best for students who, if they are accepted to a school, know without a shadow of a doubt that it is their best fit and it is where they're going to go. Another thing to consider is, are there any scholarship or financial aid priority deadlines? So here at Agnes Scott, Early Action 2, that January 15th deadline, is our scholarship priority deadline. So you'll want to apply by then in order to be considered for merit-based aid here at Agnes Scott. Finally, are your first semester senior year grades important to showing your academic growth? And if so, you might want to choose a slightly later date so that those grades can be a part of your application. Just a checklist of kind of things that are important to your Agnes Scott application. We will touch on each of these pieces more in depth as we go along. First, the common application with your Agnes Scott supplement, your letters of recommendation, your official high school transcript, and then here at Agnes Scott, we are a test optional school. So if you have your SAT or ACT scores and you feel like they're representative of you and you want them to be a part of your application, you're more than welcome to go ahead and send those in as a part of your application. If you don't, that's okay too. We do encourage you to go ahead and sign up for an interview with your admission counselor as a part of your application process. There may be additional application pieces for international, DACA, and undocumented students, homeschool students, and transfer applicants. So to see each of those pieces, you can go ahead and visit agnescott.edu/admission to learn more. So diving right into that first important piece, the Common App. The Common App has 4 major sections: personal information, and this section is really just your demographics, things like your name, your age, where you're from, all that kind of stuff. Next, academics and activities and honors, and your Common App essay. These first 3 pieces are shared with all of the colleges on your list, so all the colleges that you will be applying to through the Common App. Finally, the supplements. So this supplement piece is going to be specific to each of the colleges on your list. We're going to dive more into each of these things. So, honors and activities. This is really a time for you to share what kind of things you have been doing outside of the classroom. So, have you had a part-time job? Have you had any leadership roles in any clubs or organizations? Or have you been a part of any clubs or organizations? Did you have a certain place that you volunteered and you really like to spend time doing? Did you have any responsibilities at home, such as did you help your siblings with their school, or did you have a family member you helped take care of? Also, we know that this has looked different recently, time outside of the classroom. So were there any new skills or hobbies that you were recently able to develop and really work on? And are there any honors or awards that you want to make sure that are a part of your application? Again, so what are you doing outside of the classroom and how are you going to share that and have that show up on your application? Next, academics. So your senior year classes. This allows the admission committee to see what coursework you've taken during your senior year. This is especially important if the classes that you are currently taking aren't yet showing up on your transcript. So you'll want to share a little bit about what you're taking your senior year. These next pieces are really only relevant for students who have experienced this or have something to share. So change in progression, if you had transferred schools or taken a semester off, this is a space to kind of explain that and that experience. Disciplinary section, if you have any disciplinary actions that are going to show up on your application, it's a good space to share what happened in that situation and maybe what you learned from it as well. And then additional information. Is there anything important to your high school experience that you would want the committee to know as they're kind of looking over your transcript in your academic situation? And then finally, this last new section, COVID-19. Has COVID affected you or your family or your academic situation in any ways that are really important for the committee to know when kind of looking over your application? There's a space for you to specifically share that situation. The writing sections. The writing sections are really some of our favorite parts here in admission because it's a time where students get to really share their own voice. It's a time where you get to shine and share who you are and your own voice in your application. So the first part of the writing section is your Common App essay. This essay is going to be shared with all the colleges and universities that you're applying to through the Common App. The next important piece is the Agnes Scott supplemental. So this is a short answer section with some questions about Agnes Scott. So things that are important to us in our community here, kind of relevant to our mission statement and things that go on our campus and as a part of our community. This is specific to Agnes Scott. So when you're answering these questions, Agnes Scott admission committee is the only people who are going to be looking over them. So you want to make sure to kind of tailor answers to that as opposed to your Common App essay, which again is shared with all of your colleges and universities. So you wouldn't want to use a specific college's name when writing that. Again, this is a time where you get to share something specific to you. It's a time where your voice gets to shine through in your writing style and who you are. So it's good to spend a little bit of time thinking about what do you want to write about, what's important to share as a part of your application, and then make sure that you have time to edit it, have other people read over it before you kind of send in your application. So another important piece of the application is recommendations. It's important to think about who are going to be your recommenders. You often want to make sure that you're asking early in advance as you are going through the application process. So this might mean that you have chosen your deadline and you're going to back up a few weeks and create a deadline for your recommenders to make sure that you give yourself a little bit of wiggle room for them to go ahead and be writing those recommendations. Teachers and counselors can be invited to write their letter through the Common App as well. So you might want to think about that as you're going through and finishing your Common Application. And kind of thinking about the Common App piece, here is a Common App checklist. So you've added all of your schools to the list, all the schools that you want to apply to. You have a green check mark next to all of the sections. It's important to go ahead and check those word counts for your essay and your supplements. You won't be able to submit your application if you are over or under those word counts. So if you are having trouble right at the end submitting your application, you might just want to go back and double check those word counts. And then you've paid your application fee for all of the schools that do have an application fee. Here at Agnes Scott, we have a free application for US citizens, DACA and undocumented students. But if there are other schools on your list that do have an application fee, you'll want to make sure that you're paying those. And with all of that done, you've checked, you've double checked, you've proofread, you're ready to go ahead and submit your Common Application. But after you submit it, you'll want to think about what happens after that. What happens next? After you submit, you'll receive a confirmation email from the Common App that confirms that your application has been submitted. And about 24 hours after that, you'll receive an email from us here at Agnes Scott from admission@agnescott.edu inviting you to go ahead and set up your admission portal. It's important that you make sure you receive this email and you bookmark your Agnes Scott admission portal, as well as other portals from other colleges and universities, because this is an important part of the application process and will be an important part as you kind of move through the admitted student process and then enrolled student as well. So what does your Agnes Scott admission portal look like? It is really just a great resource of information throughout your application and admission process. So through this portal, you can make sure that you're looking at your application checklist to make sure that we here at Agnes Scott have received all of the different pieces of your application. You can also upload missing pieces directly to us. So this might include that optional SAT or ACT scores. You can go ahead and upload them right to the portal if you need to. You can also sign up for the optional admission interview with your admission counselor right on that portal. And then it's a great place to get in contact with us here in admission, so your admission counselor. If you have any questions about your application or missing pieces or financial aid and scholarships, or just Agnes Scott in general, we're always happy to answer questions. Once complete, how is your application actually considered for admission? So we have a holistic admission process here at Agnes Scott, and again, what does holistic admission mean? Our admission committee uses various pieces of the application, not just a single metric, to understand the applicant as a whole and get a sense how they will fit into our campus community here at Agnes Scott. So there are a few different pieces of that fit piece that are important for the admission committee to be thinking about. So is the student academically prepared to do well in a first year classroom? And when they are thinking over that, they will consider the student's high school transcript, what shows up there. Has the student challenged themselves? Can you kind of see maybe a change in progression? They will also consider letters of recommendation and what those recommenders had to say about a student, as well as a Common App essay. Not only is it a good time for the student to share kind of about them and their voice and things like that, but it's also a good time to kind of get a look at a student's writing and their writing skills and grammar and spelling and all that kind of stuff. And if you were submitting those SAT or ACT scores, those will be reviewed, or your admission interview. The next important thing to consider is how is a student going to fit into the institution's campus community. So again, that Common App essay is where your voice gets to shine through. It's where we get to see pieces of your personality kind of peek through, and it's great to know, is the student going to fit in well at Agnes Scott? The other supplements are great to review as well. Does a student have an understanding of who we are as a college at Agnes Scott, what our campus community looks like, and what our values are as well? And then finally, that optional admission interview is a great time to kind of have a connection point with your admission counselor, give some more context about who you are as a person. So some things that are considered are, what are the college's institutional values and mission, and kind of what's the campus culture like, and how is a student going to fit into that? That is it. That's all the information that I have to share with you about kind of navigating that application process. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar today. You can go ahead and visit agnescott.edu/visit to see our upcoming virtual workshops and visit opportunities. We have a lot of stuff going on in the fall, and we would love for you to join us. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. And with that, thanks so much for joining.